Yes, we are
Good
live.
evening. Hello, good evening, everyone at UK Crime Book Club. Welcome to tonight's author talk with myself and my fellow Eastbourne-based author, Peter Boon. So, Peter, why don't we start? Hello, why don't we start with you telling us all a little bit about you, and then I'll speak about me.
Okay, lovely. So, my name is Peter. I, like Sheila, live in Eastbourne, but also like Sheila, and as you can tell from my accent, I'm not from Eastbourne. You do the same as me with the glasses. We've just spent a minute or so off camera, off live, trying to work out whether we should have our glasses on or not, and it was giving me terrible glare, so I've just took mine off.
Yeah,
And
it's
you probably
giving me
do the
glare
same.
as well.
So yeah, I live in Eastbourne. I've lived here for 11 years. My cozy mystery novels that I write are based in a little fictional seaside village just on the outskirts of Eastbourne, near our famous landmark Beachy Head. But I'm actually, as you can probably tell from the accent, from Wigan, which is in Greater Manchester. Me and my partner moved down here 11 years ago. I've been a published author for about 18 months now. I published my first novel, Who Killed Miss Finch, in August 2020. And I'm actually, unlike Sheila, I'm a self-published author, an indie author, so I do it all myself. And I know we're going to have a chat a bit later about some of the differences between being a self-published author and being with a publishing company. So yeah, looking forward to chatting with you, and that's me.
Thank you, Peter. And hello, everyone. Some of you have seen me before. I'm Sheila Bugler. Like Peter, I live in Eastbourne. Like Peter, I'm clearly not from Eastbourne because of my accent. So I'm from Ireland originally. I spent a lot of my misspent youth traveling around the world and doing all sorts of different things before settling in London. And then in 2013, I moved to Eastbourne with my family from London, where we were living.
Yeah.
And 2013 was also the year my very first novel came out, called Hunting Shadows. I've been publishing books since 2013. I have had 7 books published so far. My 8th book is coming out in August this year. My first 3 books are a series in the D.I. Ellen Kelly series. They're all based in London. My second 3 books are all Eastbourne based, featuring an investigative journalist called Dee Doran. And I have another novel, which is a standalone, called The Lucky 8. And weirdly, myself and Peter, we message each other a lot. We kind of found each other, I think, through UK Crime Book Club. Is that right, Peter?
It was, yeah.
But we've never spoken before, have we?
I think I saw you in a post mention Eastbourne, and then I think we spoke a little on the public chat, and then I think I sent you a message. But I remember, though, that was during actual lockdown when we couldn't meet up in person anyway. So I think because of that, we just got in the habit of kind of talking by message, and then once lockdown was lifted, I just don't think we ever got around to actually meeting in person.
No, I know, which is so weird, isn't it? And also, because I don't know if we've got anyone from Eastbourne watching this tonight, but someone once described Eastbourne to me as the smallest big town in England, because it's everyone in Eastbourne seems to know everyone else. I don't know if you've experienced that, Peter.
Oh, no. Anyone I meet in Eastbourne, I usually have about half a dozen links to different other people through it's strange, isn't it? Because there's quite a lot of people here, but there is, I think, though, when you're kind of interested in like the kind of arts and things, and like being an author and performing and things like that, I think that you kind of get into connected circles.
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah. But it's lovely to chat to you finally.
Another fact about Eastbourne: we live in officially the sunniest place in the UK, don't we? So we have in Eastbourne, we have more recorded sun than anywhere else in the UK, which I don't think is saying a great deal.
Well, okay. So 2 things about that. First of all, I'm going to use that as a brilliant hook into talking about your first novel. And secondly, having come from, I imagine for you coming from Wigan as well, it must be quite similar, because I know what the weather's like up around there. So I grew up in the west of Ireland, where basically our default weather is rain. So for me to now live in Eastbourne and just not to have rain every day, it's such a lovely thing. Although we had a really rainy Christmas, didn't we? Which kind of has put me out of sorts a bit, because I'm not used to it.
But the sad thing is that we never get any snow.
No, we don't get any snow. I know.
I think because we're protected by the South Downs. But the 11 years I've lived down here, we all, like, every kind of winter, I always see on Facebook, like, all my family and friends up north kind of posting pictures of snow. I think I've known it twice in the kind of 10 and a half, 11 years we've lived down here.
I think I remember it once in the kind of 9 years we've been here. Now, listen, anyway, speaking about Eastbourne being the sunniest place in the UK, am I right in remembering that that is how you almost open your first novel, The Killing of Miss Finch?
You are right. Yes, that is
Yay.
the opening line. Do you know what? I just told that story and I actually forgot it was the opening line until you said, "Oh, that links us into."
Can we just say we haven't pre-planned this? This is not rehearsed.
No.
So, do you want to tell us about that book? Tell us about that book. There's loads I want to ask you about that book. So start. Tell us what the kind of book's about.
Okay, so it is Who Killed Miss Finch. So there seems to be glare on my laptop screen. You can't see it very well, but you've probably all seen it before. You're probably sick of seeing it. But it was my very first mystery. It's something that I'd had planned for a long time, and then finally, kind of with lockdown happening, I managed to kind of get my arse in gear and finish it. It is like I just mentioned in my introduction, I published it myself. So even though I published it in August 2020 and I wrote it just throughout 2020 in a few months, the actual planning of it and getting ready for it, I'd actually been doing for a couple of years. So when I say planning, I don't just mean the actual planning of the story, but I mean, I'm a big reader anyway, and I love my Kindle, and kind of by default through reading, I was doing lots of research about the market, about mysteries and crime novels in general, and reading lots of non-fiction books on kind of writing and planning. So I had it all kind of planned for a couple of years, but I was determined that I wasn't going to do it until I could do it successfully, because as the years have passed, there's always been a bit of a kind of cloud over self-publishing, and that has kind of lifted in the last few years, and it's now seen as a credible route. It used to be kind of linked to like vanity publishing, and for people who can't get a publishing deal. I actually never ever tried to get a publishing deal, and I was actually a quite well-known publishing house actually tried to get the rights for Edward Crisp a few months ago, but I turned that down because I did some research and they were offering me a great deal less than what the percentage I get now self-publishing. And when I researched it, many of their books didn't seem to be doing particularly any better than my own. So I've decided to stick with kind of doing it myself. But as I was just saying, I wanted to make sure that I did it properly. And the distinction, really, I think, to doing well in self-publishing is just to make your books indistinguishable from something published by a big publishing house. So from the covers, this is my proof edition that says not for resale. So you wouldn't normally get that grey band there, but you can see from the cover, I tried to do a really kind of professional looking cover that wouldn't look out of place in Waterstones. And then another trick I did, which you can tell from the cover, is, and it's something that I haven't really seen anyone else do, it's I kind of dually market to both obviously adult readers who like reading mysteries, cozy mysteries, but also to young adults as well. And I've not really seen many modern mystery writers do that. And the reason I did that is because, like many of us, I'm really inspired by Agatha Christie. She's my writing idol. I love her mysteries, and I wanted to kind of do some kind of modern tributes to her. And my two main detectives, who I'll talk about in a little while, are kind of Agatha Christie super fans. But one thing I noticed is whenever you see any kind of writers or anyone talking about Agatha Christie, they always say that they discovered her when they were a child or an early teen. And I kind of wanted to have the same kind of appeal, that it's a mystery, that they're books that anyone can read. The whole family could read them. You could read them with your kind of young adult or teenage child. And because it's set in a school, in an education setting, and because the one of the co-main characters, the detective sidekick, is a teenage guy with autism, and it's set in kind of a school setting, I thought it would also have that dual young adult appeal. And also because I'm an English teacher, I used to work at secondary schools. I now work part-time in college, but I'm really big both on kind of literacy, both for kind of young people reading a lot more, but also people generally reading a lot more. So my books are kind of first person narration from Edward, and they're deliberately this kind of easy, kind of chatty style. And I did that because I want kind of as many people to read them as possible. And lots of my readers who discovered my books have said that they haven't read a book in years, or they don't read very much, and they found these. So as well as appealing to crime fans, I wanted to kind of get people reading who wouldn't necessarily normally read.
Okay, well, you have just kind of basically like answered loads of the questions I had in my head as you were speaking.
I'm sorry, I always do that in job interviews, you know.
No, sorry, what were you going to say?
In job interview, I always do that. I answer about 4 questions in once, and they said, "Oh,
no,
we're going to
brilliant. It's brilliant." And I think you're absolutely spot on about sort of that teenage market, actually, because I think probably like loads of crime writers. You and I, we write crime fiction because that's what we read as we were teenagers. So for me, it was Agatha Christie, but also I was obsessed. When I was about 15, 16, I was obsessed with the Sherlock Holmes books. The kind of Agatha Christie influence is really obvious in your Edward Crisp series, actually. And in 2 ways, I think. First of all, really explicitly, you know, you've got these 2 protagonists who are mad Agatha Christie fans, but also the design of your first and your third covers are very kind of Art Deco-y, kind of a little bit.
Yeah, like watching the old like Poirot series.
Exactly. And also, do you know what really struck me is that, because I know that you really liked my standalone novel, The Lucky Eight.
Oh, I loved it, yeah.
But I think that one of the reasons you really liked that is because that is kind of a twist. That's kind of a modern take on a classic whodunit. You know, I set out to write kind of a whodunit, a kind of very twisty tale, which is a classic Agatha Christie kind of. You know, people talk about her as being a cozy writer, but actually, what makes her book so brilliant is the plots are so convoluted, aren't they?
Yeah. I loved the whole concept of the Lucky Eight, and obviously, don't get me wrong, I love the Eastbourne series as well. I've read the first 2. I Could Be You was fantastic, and I love that as well. And in that as well, you are a kind of very, pardon the expression, you are a kind of very kind of twisty writer, aren't you? I think, and what I like is that kind of personal point of view in the I Could Be You book that I liked, that I read. I liked how it was, we kind of knew something else was happening in the past, but we didn't know what. But you really felt like you were kind of with the protagonist in it. And I loved.
I do find myself kind of constantly drawn to that kind of like the crimes of the past affecting what's happening in the present, and I don't really know why that is. I don't know why, but it's what I keep doing over and over for some reason.
Yeah, and I think that kind of like I think it's good for your readership because it kind of brings you into like psychological thriller kind of territory a bit as well, doesn't it? The kind of very popular books by the likes of like Lisa Jewell and Claire McIntosh, and the Your Eastbourne series particularly kind of made me think of those kind of books. I love reading those kind of books.
Wow, well, I just love Lisa Jewell, so thank you for that comparison. Do you know what I wanted to ask you? Now we have got some questions, I can see them, but
yeah,
I'm just obsessing about something at the moment, Peter. So I wanted to ask you about it. So I'm writing a standalone book at the moment, which is going to come out after my next D book. So sometime next year. My next D book is out in August. But I got myself really tied up in knots about the writing process. So, you know, we speak a lot as writers about plotters and pantsers. You know, there are people like Marion Todd, my friend Marion Todd, who plots out her novels in really good detail before she starts writing.
Yeah.
And I've really tried to do that, but it never works for me. So with this standalone book that I'm writing now, I've gone right back to how I used to write, which is kind of writing with no idea where I'm going. And that it's a much less efficient way of writing, but it feels much better for me. I just want to ask kind of what's your writing process?
I'm like somewhere in between those two. So any fellow authors or anyone that knows a bit about writing will know that we're usually categorized as either plotters or pantsers. So you either plot in detail or you fly by the seat of your pants and kind of go do it as you go along. I'm kind of somewhere in between those. So I don't plot in meticulous detail, but I do plot in kind of overview detail. So as I mentioned before, when I did lots of research on writing and read lots of nonfiction books about it, about structure and stuff. And I use a method where I get the kind of key points at every so basically, there's kind of a structure theory where at certain points in the novel you expect kind of a key bit of action. So I always plot what's going to happen at my 25% mark, 50% mark, and 75% mark. And in a crime novel, they're usually your big twists, aren't they? And then I write in kind of quite short chapters that generally lend themselves to be kind of one event or scene. So what I do,
I do that as well.
Then I start to kind of put like post-it notes, or if I've got it, I sometimes use a big kind of wall chart and put bullet points in between. And then if I have an idea of something that's going to happen in between those, and then they eventually become chapters. So what I said about kind of not plotting in immaculate detail is if I've got, say, I know I'm going to have 10 chapters between the beginning and the 25% mark where I know what's going to happen next, I might have ideas for kind of half a dozen of those chapters, and the rest just seem to kind of fill themselves in as I write.
Okay.
I don't do something similar.
Oh, I think I used to, but I think with this one, it just hasn't worked. And I've just had to I have a vague idea of what happened in the past that's affecting the story now. And I have a very vague idea of where I'm going, but vague. And I've found the only way I can sit down and write is to literally sit down. And for the first time ever, I'm not writing sequentially. I'm writing from each character's perspective. So I've got different documents for each character, and I'm kind of writing for them. And I think I'm partly finding out the characters' voices as I write, but also letting their voices take me to where the plot is leading me, which is a kind of scary way to do it. But it does seem to be working.
Do you always know your solution? So do you always know who the killer's going to be, or like the final twist?
No.
No, really?
No. With the lucky 8. When I was writing the Lucky 8, I had.
We're gonna have to be careful not to have spoilers now. But you didn't know the killer.
Oh no, I won't do any spoilers. Don't worry. But I had. I got the final edits Christmas last year, and I had I think I had about 3 weeks over Christmas to get the edits done and get them back to my editor. And I remember telling Marion Todd, who's an absolutely detailed planner, about 2 weeks to go that I still didn't know who the killer was, and she was horrified. Yeah,
it's always the first thing.
You always do. You always know, do you?
Yeah, so when I first have an idea for a story, I don't know why, it's not something I deliberately plan, but when I get an idea for a story, the kind of killer or the final twist of it always seems to kind of come with the idea at the same time.
Right. No, mine doesn't. Very often, oh God, look at my hair, it's gone a bit mad, never mind. Very often what happens with me is I think I know who the killer is, but it changes as I write the book. Now, listen, we have some questions here. And one of them is, Peter, are your books available in libraries, and are they available in audio?
Oh, yeah. I have to, you've probably seen me really close now. I have to look really closely to read the questions. That's because I took my glasses off. If I put my glasses back on, I'll be able to see them from where I am. Sorry, I don't know the name of that person. It's just coming up on my view as Facebook user.
Yeah, we can just see them as Facebook user.
But thank you for asking. Yes and no. So because I am a self-published author, I don't have my books are kind of readily available online and in what we call print on demand, where you can get it from Amazon and actually even from Waterstone's website as well. But they're kind of printed especially as people order them. And I've got them in community libraries in my local town in Eastbourne, which are run as charities. So Sheila, you'll know all the local libraries like Old Town Library and Pevensey and Langley Library. My books are all in my local kind of community libraries, which are run as charities. But national libraries, no, my books aren't in there yet. Or that is something I need to kind of find time to look into.
You should do that, because East Sussex libraries are really, really supportive. They're brilliant. I've done events with them before, and they're absolutely fantastic and really supportive of local authors as well. Yeah,
it's just something, again, because I published in the middle of lockdown, lots of kind of things went by the wayside. And I think if it's certainly possible for indie authors, self-published authors to be in libraries, but I think it just takes a kind of bit more work and making that connection. And with the audio book, again, no, not yet. I had a crazy idea during lockdown, and some very kind friends at my local theatre let me kind of use all their equipment, and I recorded myself narrating the audio book. But ultimately, when I listened to some other audiobooks, it might have been me being a bit self-conscious, but I just felt like me recording it wasn't up to the same standard as having a professional narrator. So I kind of shelved that for the time being.
Okay. Okay.
Have we got any?
We have another question, which is: do you both get your ideas while walking, and how much? Oh my God, research! How much research do you have to do? And Andrew, I can see the rest of your comment there, so I'll reply to that in a minute. I kind of get my ideas while walking, and I don't know about you, Peter, but I do a lot of walking around the beautiful countryside we have here.
Yeah, I always see your lovely pictures. Yeah, I do similar.
Yeah, and then research is a really good question, Andrew. Thank you. So, I'll talk about research first, and then I'll let you, Peter.
Yeah.
I hate research, and I know loads of writers say they love it. I absolutely hate it, and the reason I hate it is that when I'm ready to write my story, the kind of urge to write is very strong, and I really resent having to do research to stop me writing.
Yeah.
But I know it's really important. But because I hate research, that's one of the reasons I moved away from doing police procedurals to having the D novels. D's an investigative journalist.
Yeah, of course.
And that means I don't have to get all the police procedural stuff right.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you like research, Peter?
I don't mind it. Very, very similarly to you. The genre I write in doesn't require too much research. It's quite good, isn't it? So when you've got like an amateur detective or like a journalist character nosing around, you don't have to kind of stick to all the procedures. Obviously, I have to have some because Edward does liaise with the police, or usually kind of works behind their back, and I might have to research. I had to do quite a lot of research in Miss Finch about kind of the types of poison to use because I was because I'm a teacher. I asked a couple of my science teacher friends, which were really helpful. And really, though, my answer to kind of a lot of these questions is I kind of do much of my author stuff, including research, including posting on social media, even the actual writing, from my mobile phone. So my partner always pulls my leg that I'm always on my phone 24/7. But more often than not, I'm doing kind of author stuff. And if I'm working from my phone, I don't really feel like it's work. So, for example, if I did have something to research, like poisons or whatever, we'll be watching a movie in the evening or watching TV in the background, and I'll just be on my phone finding out what I need to know. Similarly, I have the Microsoft Word app on my phone, and I write from that, and then it syncs up to my computer. So what I usually do is I usually proofread what I've written that day in bed in the evening from my phone, and then it will sync back up.
Really? Wow.
Social media stuff from it as well. So
do you write every single day, Peter?
Actually, I can answer that truthfully for 2022 and say, yes, I do. So I never used to. I always try to, but it always goes by the wayside. But I set myself a target to try, even if it's just kind of a few paragraphs, to write every single day in 2022. And what are we today? We're the 14th. And so far, I've managed it. You'll have to ask me again probably in a few weeks or a few more months. Do you?
No. Okay, I have a great excuse. I have a day job, and I also have a daughter who's, as you know, hasn't been very well. She's been homeschooled. Years ago, when I started writing first, I used to get up really early every morning religiously. I'd get up really early and write before the day started. And back then, I was really driven by fear. I was so scared if I stopped writing, like if I didn't write every day, that I would just stop and I wouldn't keep going with it. I think I'm a bit more confident in myself now that I am a writer and that I will keep writing, which means that I do allow myself days where I don't write, and I don't beat myself up about it if I don't write. What I find really difficult is, as you know, like the kind of it's like a wave, isn't it? There are times when all you want to do is write, and there are times when the writing's just not coming. It's really tough.
Yeah.
So when the writing is not coming and when it's really tough, having loads of other stuff to do is a great excuse. But when the writing, like today, I had a brilliant writing day and I can feel I'm on a roll at the moment. And I know that next week, when I'm working and I have to do other stuff, I'm going to really resent that. I get really resentful of things that get in the way of my writing when I'm on a roll. But at the same time, they're great excuses when I'm not on a roll.
I mean, for me, it was adjusting to kind of writing as a hobby and writing as like a source of income, as a job, really, because when I wrote Miss Finch, I was still working full time, albeit teaching at home through the lockdown. And as any teachers, I know Caroline will know, as any other kind of teachers watching will know, it's very difficult to kind of teach full time and find time to do kind of other stuff. So after Miss Finch did really well, as it came out in the August, at that Christmas, I went to teaching part-time. So I left the school I was in because it was a lovely residential special needs school where I got lots of inspiration for Noah's character. But unfortunately, because it was residential special needs, they didn't really allow you to work part-time because they want people to be there kind of all the time for the students. So I left there and got a part-time job in a college teaching like English resits to people who didn't pass English in school. Right. It's a really small college. I just work a couple of days a week. So now I have all this free time to write, but obviously that's giving us financial pressures. So like you say about feeling guilty, if you can't kind of aren't writing as fast or you have days off, you feel bad because the writing is kind of half of what's paying the bills now. So
that's scary, isn't it? Yeah.
But it's a jump that I thought I would take. Like I mean, it's just me and my partner. We don't have children or anything, so I thought I would just kind of take the risk and go for it. I mean, my aim is to, in maybe a couple of years' time, to be able to write full time and then just do kind of supply teaching as I need it. But at the minute, I'm just trying to kind of balance both. Oh, Caroline is saying, Pete's quite correct. I multitask often, teach full time and do author chats. I don't know how you manage it, to be honest, Caroline. She also said above that she thinks we're on some kind of watch list for our.
I think that might be right.
And sorry, go on. I was just going to say we just missed a comment from Donna was asking us, what characters would you like to borrow from each other's books to appear in your own?
Can I just say that's a classic Donna question. Her questions are always so clever. Always
when you do the chats, I'm sure she tries to think of questions that you're not going to be able to answer on purpose.
Well, I think I really like Noah in your books. Actually, I think I'd quite like to.
Well, everyone always said Noah. Yeah, he's lovely. Isn't he?
Do they?
yeah, he's very popular. Noah. Yeah, I love writing. Love writing Noah as a character. He's great, and lots of people always ask me, is he inspired by one particular student? But he isn't. He's kind of a combination of lots of different boys that I've taught over the years. And I love writing Noah. And I think I've told a couple of people this, but a little kind of exclusive for my next book is Noah is going to have some of his own perspective chapters. So we're going to be hearing from Noah as well as Edward as the narrator.
That'd be amazing, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried to kind of experiment with form a little bit. So in my last book, Death in the Closet, which I can talk about in detail later, but the plot lended itself to kind of things that would be in the news. So I started having kind of chapters where there's a news story and all social media comments underneath. And because it was about attitudes to like homophobia and things, that was a good way of exploring that by showing kind of like public comments.
That sounds fascinating. I want to hear about that later. We've got some more questions first. So Leslie, hi Leslie, thank you for joining us. Oh my goodness, Leslie asked what my day job is.
So you told me this privately last week.
I did. I'll say it more politely in this forum. I work in corporate communications, which is basically, I really slagged it off a bit when I was explaining to Peter last week, but actually I really do like my job because it's quite creative. It's kind of about I work for a big organization, and my job really is to kind of explain in kind of non-corporate language what's happening in the organization and why it matters to people.
Also internal comms.
You kind of internal comms, yeah. And I do like it, but I've been doing it for a long time, and I would absolutely leave my job tomorrow if I could afford it. I work 4 days a week.
Oh, okay.
So that's pretty tough. But it pays the bills. And actually, that's the thing that people don't realize about writing. I've got 7 novels published. They're all doing pretty okay. But I still am not earning enough money from writing to do it full time. But I say that, and that is tough. But, also, and Peter, I'm sure you feel the same. It's my choice to write. So I never begrudge the fact that I'm not making lots of money out of it yet. And I always, I never forget that I'm incredibly lucky to be a published writer. And also that I am lucky enough to have found the thing in life that gives me the feeling writing does that nothing else does. And I think that's...
This leads me to one of the things I wanted to ask you, and that is, how did you first get a publishing deal? How did it come about? So I know you're with Canelo Crime now, aren't you? I think you were maybe before that, but I just wondered how you got published and kind of what the story was.
So for me, and can I ask you the same question afterwards about sort of, because one of the questions I want to ask you is that whether or not you always wanted to write. So I'll do that in a minute.
Yeah.
So for me, I always wanted to write, but I never really had the confidence, if I'm honest, to do it when I was younger. And then I've got 2 kids, and the summer that my second child was born, it was a really hot summer in London. It was a heatwave summer in 2006, and I remember really clearly walking to the park one day with both my kids. And just having this moment, I still remember it really clearly. And it was an absolute light bulb moment. And I just thought, this thing that I've always wanted to do, if I don't start doing it, one day I'll be lying on my deathbed and I'll really regret not having given it a go.
Yeah.
And I went home that evening and I started writing. And I've told this story a lot, but it's absolutely true. We had this house with a kind of loft room at the top. It wasn't a proper loft room, but there was little stairs going up to it. And that's where I had my computer. And bizarrely, in that room, there was 2 books, which must have been left by the previous person who owned the house, on how to write. So I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never written fiction before. So I sat down every evening, and with the help of these 2 books, I literally taught myself how to write fiction.
Oh, wow.
And it took a while. And I don't want to get too technical about it, but there's this moment in writing that people talk a lot about every author having their own voice.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people talk about is that there's every author, part of becoming a writer is that you have to find your own voice. And I know there was a really profound moment. Sorry if I sound a bit pretentious, but there was a profound moment where I'd been working at this and trying to write every evening, and I was just getting it all wrong. And then one evening it just all came together, and I kind of knew that moment in that evening that I had it, and I still can't explain what it is, but I knew that I kind of understood how to write. I think it's probably the closest I can come to saying it.
Yeah. And
from then on, I kept writing, and randomly one Sunday in the newspaper, I saw an ad for something called Apprenticeships in Fiction. And it was this 1-year scheme that was funded by the Arts Council, where you could work with a mentor in your writing genre for a year.
Yeah.
And I saw it must have been a Saturday I saw the ad, and the closing date was the next day. So that Saturday evening, I sat down, I put together an application. You were meant to have a finished novel. I didn't have a finished novel, but I sent it off anyway. And amazingly, I got accepted. They only accept 4 writers from across the UK. And I spent a year working with Martin Waits, who's quite a well-known crime writer. And he was amazing. He helped me finish my first novel, and he was just incredible. And what Martin did more than anyone else is that he made me believe that I actually could write crime fiction, and I was a crime writer. But to give you an idea, and to give everyone watching this an idea of how tough it is, and that first novel I wrote with Martin never got published.
Really?
I didn't get an agent through that novel. I wrote another novel after that got me an agent but didn't get me a publisher. And then I wrote a 3rd novel, and that 3rd novel is what got me my first publisher. So that's me.
So those first 2 novels, are they just kind of sat in a drawer then? Do you think you would ever publish them in the future?
So the second one, actually, let me tell you then. So the first novel had a character in it that I really loved called Ivan, and I reused him in The Lucky 8.
Okay.
And so he came into The Lucky 8. So I have reused bits of that novel. And then the second one, a lot of the plot of that second novel formed kind of the part of the plot of I Could Be You, actually. So I have repurposed it. But I've also written loads of other stuff that's never been published. So I'm quite I write very quickly, and I think I'm quite prolific. So I imagine if I could write full time, I'd have loads of books out there.
Oh, bless you. No, it's always the way, isn't it?
Yeah. How about you? Did you always want to write as well?
So for me, I've always wanted to write, and I've kind of experimented with kind of doing different writing stuff. So some people might know this from previous chats, and I think it's on my Amazon profile as well. But when I've always loved murder mysteries, and I've already mentioned being inspired by Agatha Christie. But when I was 14, I'd written a murder mystery play, which was performed by a local theatre group.
Wow.
And that was my kind of first kind of foray into kind of writing. So it's interesting. I always think it's interesting that I've kind of gone full circle, and I'm back to writing murder mysteries, albeit in a different form. So I always kind of loved English at school. I did English at university and become an English teacher. But bits of writing have always kind of been in the background. So in my 20s, I worked for Co-op Bank head office in Manchester, and I wrote for their staff magazine. I've written kind of online articles for some LGBT magazines. When I first moved down to this part of the country, I used to be in the Brighton Gaymen's Chorus, and they do their shows a bit like jukebox musicals, where there's a central idea and there's a script around the songs. And I used to kind of co-write their scripts on the script writing team. So I've had my work performed in the Brighton Dome, which is where ABBA won Eurovision, and I've always done kind of different bits of things like that. And then in the last couple of years, I've obviously kind of really kind of finally kind of realized my ambition in terms of kind of writing a novel, which I think I always wanted to do, but I just kind of got a little bit kind of lost along the way for a while, as you do.
Yeah, you do. Now, actually, I was listening bizarrely, and then we'll go back to the questions that are coming up. I listened to a documentary on the radio about Agatha Christie last night, and because obviously she wrote plays as well as novels.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
apparently she much preferred writing plays to novels.
Yes, that's true. She did, didn't she?
Yeah. So, how about you? Do you think you'll write more plays?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, at the minute, I'm kind of happy doing my novels, but it is something I would kind of like to do in the future.
Do you know, we should collaborate on a murder mystery play for Eastbourne, shouldn't we?
Oh wow, well that would be amazing. That would be fantastic.
Caroline has asked a question saying, what were your top reads of last year? Sheila, oh, I was Sam's, which is very sweet. Thank you. I was.
Yes,
Sam's
I remember
top read of
that
last year. So my top read of last year, and actually this is a very nice question, Caroline, and the reason for that is that my top read of last year was Chris Whittaker's We Begin at the End.
Oh,
and the reason that's really nice. Have you read it, Peter?
No, I've not. I've got it here. I can see it actually from where I am, but I haven't read it yet. And I know it's highly recommended.
It's absolutely brilliant. And the reason that's a really good question is that I think that UK Crimes Book Club first author chat was actually me chatting with Chris Whittaker, I'm pretty sure, about his writing in his book. Yeah. I could be wrong about that. Caroline says her top read was T.G. Campbell's amazing Bow Street Society novels, which I haven't read. And Donna Morfitt says, oh my God, Peter, read it. And it is brilliant. It's absolutely
yeah,
brilliant.
I think me and Donna have spoke about that before. Yeah, well, I did the August Bank Holiday festival panel here, and I did a cozy crime panel with the T.G. Campbell and Victoria Dowd as well. That's another one whose T.G. Campbell's books are on my kind of to be read list. But I'm sure you'll all agree, being in wonderful groups like this, you're always getting all these recommendations that you just never get through.
Donna's just said he's lovely, isn't she? And I would just say he's adorable. He's ridiculous. He's so young and handsome and talented. It's quite disgusting, really.
Are you talking about Chris?
Yeah.
Oh,
he's lovely.
Yeah, Caroline just confirmed that it was you two. It was you two was the first ever.
Oh, brilliant!
So, yeah.
So tell us about this year. What's coming out for you this year in terms of your writing and stuff?
Okay, so I had a bit of a quiet last 6 months. So I was meant to have a novel out last summer, which was postponed because a couple of different things happened. My partner was ill and I had COVID and a few things happened. So that got delayed. But now I'm working on my next novel is called Tangling Bottles. And it's my first kind of venture into a serial killer mystery. So it's still Edward Crisp. And you could probably tell from the title, it's kind of very much inspired by lots of different Agatha Christie novels again.
Yeah.
So any kind of fans of Edward Crisp might remember that Tangling Bottles is actually the title of his own unpublished novel that he wrote. And because he has kind of anxiety and mental health issues, he never did anything with it. And the premise of this novel is his lovely new girlfriend, Fiona, who we met in the last book, has kind of given him lots of confidence. And she's persuaded him to self-publish this book, which he does. And the story starts at his kind of book launch evening. Now, the plot of Edward's book, Tangling Bottles, involves a serial killer. And he receives a note at the book launch. And a crazy person has sent him a letter and is emulating his plot in real life. So they give Edward a list of 10 of his family and friends, like 10 loved ones, and tell Edward that they're going to get killed, but he doesn't know who in what order. And that's how the story starts. So in terms of plot, it's probably Obviously, there's lots of Agatha Christie homage in there, but it just by the very nature of kind of having a serial killer and having multiple deaths, it's probably slightly darker than the ones I've done before. But I've tried to kind of keep my traditional humour and everything as well.
Wow, that sounds amazing. When is that coming out, did you say? Sorry?
I've not got an exact date. It's just in the final stages. It's likely to be spring, like March or April time, I think. I'll be announcing the release date soon.
Okay, and can you tell us, because all of your novels are set in the fictional village of Chalky Gap?
Chalk Gap, yeah, that's right.
Chalk Gap, and presumably that's, and well, not presumably, you've said it, it's a kind of a fictional version of the area around Beachy Head, yeah?
Yeah, that's right.
So what inspired you to choose that as a location?
So I knew I wanted a seaside location, but I knew I also wanted a little village, and we don't really have a little village that's near us that's on the seafront. So it's kind of a little bit like, you won't really know this reference if you don't live locally to me and Sheila, but we have just a couple of miles inland from the sea, we have East Dean, don't we? And it's a little bit like East Dean. There's like a little traditional Miss Marple, Midsummer Murders type village, but actually on the seafront. So because we didn't have one, and I thought Eastbourne itself was too kind of big for the purposes of what I wanted, this little claustrophobic village where everyone knows each other, I just invented one.
Okay, I'm really looking forward to reading that then. It sounds really good. So do you think you'll ever write something that's not, are you kind of any plans to write a standalone that's separate from what you've done so far?
Yes, so the way that I've built my Edward Christie series so far is this one, obviously the stakes are a lot higher with lots of Edward's family and friends at risk. And this is going to be not the last Edward Christie, but it's going to be the last Edward Christie for a little while. And then I mentioned this in previous interviews, that the other genre that I really enjoy and would have written in if I wasn't writing mysteries is rom-coms. So my plan.
Oh my goodness! Wow, I did not know that about you.
I've spoke about it vaguely before, but I think this is my first time announcing that after Edward Christie, I'm going to be having a little break, not just from Edward Christie, but from the crime genre completely for a while. And I'm going to be writing a rom-com, which will be out in the second half of this year.
Amazing. So, right, we've got a question from Andrew, which we'll go to in a minute. In the meantime, I'm going to ask you something that comes up a lot in UK Crime Book Club, which is there's often a lot of conversation around why authors choose to write under different names. And very often the answer is because authors write under different names when they're writing different genres or subgenres. So is your
No, I'm not going to do that.
Is it going to be a Peter Boon book, yeah?
Yeah, it's going to be Peter Boon. Yeah, I've thought about that. I don't like that. It just sounds like too much hassle. And I think it's a funny one, isn't it? Because people have different opinions on this. And I know you've got to be careful with like the on Amazon and like the kind of all the bots on Amazon and making sure that you get shown your book to the right readers and that kind of thing. But I think readers are readers, and lots of my readers haven't kind of particularly read mysteries or cozy mysteries before, and I do think from a lot of the feedback I've had and a lot of the things that people have told me they like about the Edward Christie series, like the relationships, like Edward and Noah, and Edward's kind of relationships that he's had with a couple of female characters in the series, people like that kind of side of it. And because I kind of write quite cozy light mysteries, I don't think it's too much of a world away from people who write rom-coms. And the other thing that I think is in my favor there is my gender. So I think because it's a male writer, I'm hopefully going to avoid the kind of stereotype of it being like a kind of fluffy, trashy rom-com.
Right. Yeah.
It's more kind of in the style of like kind of Mike Gale or David Nichols that would hopefully kind of appeal to kind of lots of different audiences. But yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it. I'm definitely going to use Peter Boon. I mean, I might differentiate by using like a different font for my for my author name on the book or something. But otherwise, it is going to be under my own name.
Okay, so that's very exciting. And now there's something else I want to pick up on what you said, and then we can go back to the questions. I can see some lovely questions coming in. But the point that you raised about people loving your characters, one of the things I just love about crime fiction is that everyone says that crime fiction is plot driven, but I don't think that's true at all. I think all the best crime fiction is character driven.
Definitely.
But because your books and my books too, I spend a long time thinking about my plot and trying to work it out and stuff. And plot is really important. But when I think back to all the best crime fiction books that I've read, all the crime fiction books I've loved the most, often I can't remember the plot. I can't remember what happens, but I always remember the characters.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. So I think the characters hook you into the series.
Yes.
But I think then you also need, I think my novels have also done well and I've had good feedback on the characters, but also having a clever ending or something that people didn't guess or something that's a quite good twist. So I think you need a combination of not necessarily the whole plot all the way through, but I think you need kind of a good kind of conclusive ending and a good twist at the end combined with good characters.
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely. And that's one of the things I spend a lot of time, and especially, like I've said, because I don't plot my novels first, what I spend a lot of time doing is I write stuff that I love and I really want to keep in the book. So I have to then spend ages causing myself lots of grief by working out how I can make that fit and how I can make a plot that allows me to fit that in, which takes ages and it's very painful. And now we've got a lovely question from Andrew. Where's that gone? Yes. Andrew says, I must look out for Agatha Christie novels. So, okay, Peter, question for you and then a question for me. So let's go with your question first. What book by Agatha Christie is your favorite, Peter?
Oh, I have a couple. I actually, if you, anyone that follows me on my Facebook or Instagram or off the page, for a 100-year anniversary last year, well, it was 2020 now, actually, I did a countdown of my top 10 favourites, but up at the very top are, and then there were none, where everyone's killed off one by one on an island, and that kind of really set the template for kind of lots of similar modern novels. And Murder of Roger Ackroyd, which is wonderful as well. I'm torn between.
I've just downloaded that to my Kindle. I haven't read it yet, and I'm so excited about reading it.
It's brilliant. It's one of the best examples of a really good classic village mystery. But there's obviously a little bit more to it than that as well, which I can't really spoil. But it's an amazing novel, both of those two.
Okay,
Sheila,
so then I'm going to.
That was from Andrew, and he's also asking, what author inspired you, Sheila, to write, and what is your favourite novel?
Okay, so Andrew, the author that inspired me to write 100% was Harlan Coben, actually. I remember when I started writing, I didn't really know that I wanted to write crime fiction. And another kind of really clear memory for me is reading a Harlan Coben novel and thinking, this is what I want to do. Yes, this is what I want to do. I want to write something that's pacey, that has lots of twists. Now, I'm not saying for a moment I am as good as Harlan Coben, but he's certainly the writer that inspired me more than any other.
You certainly wouldn't mind all the Netflix deals, I bet.
No, I definitely wouldn't, actually. That would be fantastic. And then my favorite novel, and my favorite novel isn't a crime fiction novel. So I'm going to tell you my favorite novel, and then I'm going to tell you I'm going to tell you the best crime fiction novel I've read recently because it's amazing. My favorite novel is a book by an American writer called Norman Maclean called A River Runs Through It, which was made into a beautiful film, directed by Robert Redford. It's my favorite film because it is the most beautiful story about family and loss and grief, and it's absolutely beautiful, and I just love that book so much. Have you read it, Peter?
I've seen the movie years ago. I've never read the book.
The book is absolutely incredible, and I just want to give a big shout out for a crime fiction novel that I've just finished called Mrs. March. I don't know how I read it. Somebody sent it to me. I can't remember the name of the author, I'm afraid. Oh my God, it's absolutely brilliant. It's called Mrs. March. It's set in New York. It's completely, brilliantly unique and clever. And if anyone has read it, please add a comment in here. Donna's saying no, but Donna, I don't know what you're saying no to. I'm not sure about that. You must tell us.
I wondered that. I was about to ask that. So Donna, let us know what you're saying no to.
Yes, let us know what you're saying no to.
And
Leslie says... it's one of us anyway. Leslie said we're speaking over each other. Look at us. Leslie says she agrees that as much attention needs to be given to character as well as plot. I'm just making sure that we haven't missed any questions.
No, I don't think so.
So what's your favorite? What's your kind of best novel of all time if you had to choose one? Not from your top 10 this year, but best of all time.
I don't know. So obviously I mentioned my kind of love of all the Agatha Christie novels, But obviously also I'm an English teacher and I have an English literature degree, so I've obviously read lots of all the old classics. I love Thomas Hardy, and a book of his called Mayor of Casterbridge is probably one of my all-time favorites. And there's an absolute fantastic twist in that halfway through that really blew me away, and I like the characterization in that. I also, obviously not novels, but I'm also kind of a big fan and studied a lot of Shakespeare plays. And I've actually been in anticipation of starting writing the rom-com soon. I've actually been kind of reading up and researching some of the Shakespeare comedies, because obviously the rom-com as a genre has obviously much of its roots in Shakespeare's comedies. And I've taught a lot of those at GCSE and A level, so I love a lot of kind of classic literature. It would be hard to say kind of one all-time favorite, really. I think
it is hard. Yeah, it is hard. And actually, even after I said A River Runs Through It, I'm thinking of The Great Gatsby as well, which is another book I love.
Oh yeah, I love The Great Gatsby. That's fantastic.
It is amazing. That's a book I could read. I just think I could read it again and again and again. I just love it so much.
Yeah, when I did my English literature degree, it was the very first novel in the very first module that we studied, and it was amazing. Leslie saying that she loves Thomas Hardy, so descriptive, and you feel right in the time and place. Lots of twists too. Yeah, Leslie, that's what I loved about it, the twists. So yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it? So a lot of these, I'm thinking back to novels I've read years ago, but I think as a writer you get consumed in what you're writing. So for the last 2 years, all I've read is crime novels. In the last couple
me
of months,
too. I feel like I've stopped reading anything except crime
with
fiction.
my new venture, I've started reading rom-coms again, and I just don't think, especially when you're in groups like this, there's just so much good stuff to read that you can never get round to all of it.
Have you, if you're reading rom-coms, have you read any Marian Keyes yet?
Oh, I used to read them all years ago. They're amazing. Yeah, they're lovely.
She's amazing, isn't she? She's such a brilliant writer and such a gorgeous person as well.
Yeah, do you know her?
No, I just I'm completely just from interviews and stuff. I wish I knew her. I want to be her friend. Marian Keyes, if you're watching this, please will you be my friend?
Years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I read all the kind of Marian Keyes books when they were big at the time. They're lovely books. Yeah, she's a great writer.
I think writing a good rom-com is such that's going to be a real challenge, isn't it? It's because it's a real craft, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've been.
Sorry, Caroline, I was just seeing your message. Sorry, go on, Peter.
Yeah. So I said we've got 8 minutes left. I think it's 7 probably. Yeah, it's a real it is a real craft, and I've been doing kind of my research in reacquainting myself with them, kind of reading lots of them, watching lots of the kind of rom-com movies over Christmas on Netflix and so on. And I don't know, it's a bit like when I'm writing my Edward Chris mysteries, especially the way I did kind of Edward and Noah as these kind of meta characters, where Noah is kind of fascinated with the murder mystery genre. Even though I did that, I think because it's a genre I enjoy, I think I kind of did it quite naturally, and I wasn't kind of slavishly looking at, you have to do this and you have to do that.
Yeah.
And I also do try and do kind of like fresh takes on things as well. But I've actually got, I'm not announcing it yet, but I've got kind of a really specific idea for what I want to do for this rom-com. I have kind of started writing it on the side while I'm finishing off Tangling Bottles. I just realised that we never actually spoke about what you're working on. So what's your next book that's out this year then, Sheila?
So my book that's coming out this year is called When You Were Mine. It's book 4 in the D series, and I really love this one, actually. So I'm really hoping that people like it. Very briefly, it's about Dee's an investigative journalist. A woman called Cassie contacts her because Cassie was wrongly convicted of killing her husband a long time ago. When she was sent to prison, her baby daughter was taken away from her and adopted. She now wants to be reunited with her daughter. She wants to clear her name. She wants Dee to help her, and Dee starts to help her. But just as all of that kicks off, her adopted daughter is killed, and Cassie becomes the main suspect in the murder investigation. Set in Eastbourne. I love this book. It really it was lovely to write, and I actually felt very emotional at the end of it. I love the ending, and it just makes me really happy. So I hope everyone else loves it too. And I think we
So
need
does Dee have to try and clear? Sorry, does Dee have to try and clear Cassie's name?
So Dee has to do two things. She has to try and clear Cassie's name from the crime she was convicted of, but also she has to try to find out who really killed Cassie's daughter to stop Cassie being wrongly accused a second time. But as the story progresses, all of the evidence piles up against Cassie, so Dee is wondering if she is right to carry on defending her and helping to prove her name.
I mean, for anyone who's not read this series, I love Dee as a character. First of all, I want to live in her house. It just sounds amazing.
I know, so do I. Do you know what? A journalist asked me one time, was that my real house? And I was like,
I wanted that when I first read it, you know.
No.
So you've never lived in a house like that?
No, I one day, maybe one day. Listen, I think we need to start showing off our books. Why don't you go first and show off your books, and I'll grab mine off the shelf while you're doing that.
Okay, so this is my first book, which I've mentioned quite a bit. This is Who Killed Miss Finch. So if you want to read my books in order, do start with this one, especially as until tomorrow night, I think it's tomorrow night, it is currently on a 99p deal this week, which I think ends at midnight tomorrow. So if you do want to start reading my books, this is the first one. It would be a good chance to do it because you get to pay 99p for the Kindle version rather than $2.99. Or if you fancy something that's a little bit kind of more of the season, the Snow Day Murders, which is the little village Edward is in, is kind of snowed in. And then Edward has to try and solve the crime without the police being able to get there. And then finally, we're out of time. I wish I had more time to talk about this because this one I'm very passionate about is Death in the Closet. And
love that cover.
This was inspired by a fact that I've known for years, and I've had this idea for years, that there are no openly gay footballers. Firstly, in this country, it wasn't until recently, till an Australian player came out a couple of months ago, there were no openly gay football players currently playing in the world in like a top league. That's now been rectified by an Australian player. And it's all about a guy that is finally kind of about to be brave and be the first like famous football player to come out as gay, but then he gets murdered first. And it is the kind of mystery surrounding that. Sheila, do you want to go with your covers?
Yes, I'm going to go with two. So this is the first book in my Dee Doran series called I Could Be You, the first in my Eastbourne series. There's 3, and the 4th one is coming out this year. Alongside that, this is my standalone novel, The Lucky 8, which is also available for 99p at the moment. It's a standalone novel. It's about 8 people who survived a plane crash, and 5 years later, someone starts killing them off one by one. I've got other books published too, but if you start with those, you'll find the rest of them.
Yeah.
Now, Andrew, yes, my books are available in libraries and audio libraries everywhere. Andrew, thank you for that question.
Yeah, and just another one from Andrew, just to finish. If anyone's got the answer to this, please kind of write on the comments underneath this chat. So, Andrew, we were talking about films a few minutes ago, and Andrew is saying he loves the film of The Terminal starring Tom Hanks, and he's wondering if it's in book form. He's tried Barnes & Noble and other places. He's wondering if Steve Munoz, who's in this group, knows. But if anyone knows the answer to that, if anyone knows if there was a book of The Terminal, could you just for us just write on the comments underneath here for Andrew? I think we're almost out of time, aren't we? We've got a minute or two left.
Yeah. We have 2 minutes left. Should we go for it? Let's. Why don't you tell me the top thing you'd like to achieve in your writing over the next 2 years?
Oh, great. Easy. I want to be a full-time author in the next 2 years. And also, as previously mentioned, kind of transition to writing in a different genre as well, which is rom-coms.
Okay, and I'll answer the same. Oh, sorry. I'll answer the same question quickly. We've got 1 minute left. Like Peter, I would love to be a full-time writer. I'd also like somebody, please, in TV to buy the rights to all my Dee Doran books. They're set on the same stretch of coast where several very well-known TV programs have been filmed, and I got that location first. So you should put my books on TV.
Oh, wait, same. I want that one as well. I'm a couple of miles up the road from you, and mine are on Beachy Head.
Yes. So we could both do that. And listen, that is it. Peter, it has been lovely to talk to you. Really
yeah,
lovely.
We've actually said we're going to meet up and have a coffee now, haven't we?
Definitely.
Kind of met on here. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I always enjoy my chats on here. And I just want to kind of, while we got the chance, just to say a massive thank you to all the admins, to Caroline and Sam. This is such a fantastic group, both as an author and a reader. This
really
is such a valuable group.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So thank you to the admins for all your hard work. Thanks to everyone that's watched us this evening. If you're given any questions, hopefully we've answered them for you. And have a lovely weekend, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.